going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets here on our FTN YouTube page. You're listening on iTunes and Spotify. Also, appreciate you if you are listening over there. Feeling a little under the weather here, so my sentence is clearly not even making sense here off the hop. So 2 Monday Night Football games here. I'm just going to rapid fire through some of my picks. First up, we have Ravens and the Buccaneers. Baltimore checking in at -4, and the total here a little bit larger than the other game. It's actually jumped up since the Sirius show today at 50. There's some 49s, 49.5 there. It's going to be the better of the two games, I do believe, with the other game, a total of 44 in Arizona between the Chargers and the Cardinals. I can't get a feel of the Chargers. They're winning football games. They haven't played a lot of good teams. They played the Chiefs. They hung around. The Chiefs remained perfect, but they really could have a couple losses on their schedule. Divisional games get a little weird. They've already shown us they can travel east and pick up a W. I kind of have a lean to the Cardinals winning this thing at home. I'm not super confident in my own pool. I did pick Arizona at +1. And yeah, they're checking in at +1 across the board. To see +1.5 actually over at FanDuel. So, I mean, the Chargers have showed us that they're the better team. They have the better defense. They have a true identity. They want to run the football. They do have the better quarterback, even though Herbert has been fantastic. He's been playing through some stuff, but Kyler hasn't looked good either. Without some of the rushing touchdowns, he really wouldn't be all that great from a fantasy football perspective. I do like Baltimore tonight. I like the -4. You know, I'm comfortable teasing them down like -2.5 to win by a field goal if you wanted to go that way and spend a little bit more juice instead of the 4. But I think that they go in and win the football game. I thought I was going to sneeze there. I'm really going through something. All right, so I'm going to roll through the picks and the props and kind of get out of here because nobody wants to listen to a guy who's sneezing nonstop and sniffling. So let's start here with two of the obvious plays. Like I said, like both teams, I guess 2 of the 4 have true identities where the other ones actually the Bucks are good. The Bucks are solid. They've been great. They're passing the football. They got, a lot out of Bucky and Tucker last week. I think all the running backs are in very tough spots this week against Baltimore. But one thing we know is that the Ravens want to run the football and that the Chargers want to run the football. And for Derrik Henry, I mean, I don't know how else you can bet this guy. Like he just clears his rushing yard prop every week. He scores a touchdown every week. I think on the show we gave like 115 attempts, 100 yards, and a touchdown one week, and it was like +150. So I'm teasing him down over at Bet365, 15 rushing attempts and 75 rushing yards. This is not going to blow you away in terms of the number. It's -135. He said 15 attempts and 75 rushing yards in every game minus week 1. Minus week 1 where game script was not in his favor. First game with 3 different dudes on the offensive line. And other than that, he's been awesome. 151 yards, 199 yards, 92, 132 his last 4 games. The Bucks rank inside the top 10 in yards allowed per carry. So we're teasing him down here a little bit. His rushing yard props around 92. He probably hits the century mark again. He probably flirts with 20 rushing attempts. He probably finds the end zone again because this is what he's doing. But we'll go with the 15 attempts, the 75 rushing yards. And that is -135, sorry, over at Bet365. The other guy is J.K. Dobbins. So J.K. Dobbins has taken full control of this backfield. We saw Kamani Vidal, rookie, couple touches. He had a 30-yard receiving touchdown last week. He had 2 catches, and he had 40 receiving yards. He had a couple carries. But J.K. Dobbins had 25 carries in the Chargers' last game. You look at our pace tool over at ftnfantasy.com, they are third, the Chargers, in run percentage. They're running the football 52% of the time. It's up at the top right there with the Baltimore Ravens. So this is what they want to do, is run the football, slow the pace down. We knew this with Harbaugh and Roman. This is what they want to do. He's fresh off a game where he had all of those touches. He's got this matchup against the Cardinals, who rank inside the top 10 in yards allowed per carry. Fantasy points to backs, why JK was inside the top 12 in the rankings this week. Heading into this week, they had allowed the 4th most rushing yards per game. And if you look at our stats hub, you will see J.K. Dobbins inside the top 5 in explosive runs. Those are runs of at least 10 plus yards. So he's had some big runs this season, which could help him get to this number. I have the lean to the over 17 rushing attempts and the over 79 rushing yards. I'm just going to tease it down a little bit here. 15 rushing attempts, 75 rushing yards, minus 130, like Derrik Henry. Now, some single props. Zay Flowers, over 60.5 receiving yards at minus 110. It's been a good couple weeks for Zay Flowers. It's been a couple dud games. I feel like when the games are competitive, he shows up. And I think that this will be a competitive game tonight against the Bucs. He has 243 yards in his last 2 games, 16 catches on 21 targets. A lot of his damage has come in the first half of games, and they're leaning on the run in the second half. That could be the case here, especially if Baker does struggle. Because again, I don't expect the Bucs to have a lot of success running the football. But Tampa ranks 7th in total yards allowed per game. They're 5th in passing yards allowed per game. He is the best matchup here, according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool for Zay Flowers in the slot against Tyke Smith, who is among the leaders in yards per route run covered. So I like this matchup for Zay Flowers. The over 5.5 catches, I'm just going to stay away from it. It's a high number, so I take the receiving yards. You can do this on a couple grabs. Mike Evans is the other one inside this game. So I think there's more appealing props inside the Bucs and the Ravens game. It's the higher total, and both teams have struggled through the air, and both teams, more so Baltimore this year, stout against the run, but Mark Andrews and Mike Evans. We'll start with Evans. I feel like there's the bigger edge between him and Godwin. Godwin's up high in the 70s, and I think he probably gets there. The Ravens have allowed 3 yards per carry. It's the best mark in football. They've allowed 59 rushing yards per game. It's the best mark in football. For Mike Evans in this spot, now, I think the secondary is better than what they've shown us. There's been some garbage time stuff, in particular against the Cowboys, where Dak in the fourth quarter threw the football and played from behind. So some of the numbers may be skewed. But overall, when you just bake in the fact how good they are against the run, of course they're going to give up passing yards. Some teams are not even bothering running. Some teams are playing from behind, so they're chucking. But you can't ignore the fact that they've allowed the second most passing yards per game. They've allowed the third most yards per attempt. They've allowed the fourth most yards per reception. And heading into this week, no team had allowed more receiving touchdowns to wide receivers than Baltimore, which is a big reason why they had allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers. So Mike Evans at 54.5. Last week, limited injury. Also, Marshawn Lattimore has just shut him down over the pretty much the whole course of Evans' career. He's a good corner, might be slightly overrated, but it's always a good matchup between those two. Evans didn't practice this week, off the injury report, should be good to go. Some books are having 57, 59 receiving yards, so we're getting 54 here, and we have him for over 60 yards in our projection. So I think the bigger edge is with Mike Evans versus Chris Godwin, but I also think both of these guys are in play that I don't expect the Bucs, in quote unquote their 3-headed monster, to have a lot of success running the football. So I do like Godwin. They want to come in here with like 10 props. I'm going to side with Evans here. I also think Cade Otton's in a good spot because no team has allowed more receptions to tight ends than Baltimore. And Cade Otton, his catch prop is juiced at over 3.5 minus 155, I think. And then the receiving yard numbers at 28. I think he could actually 38. I think he could get there, but I think the biggest edge is with Evans. I mentioned Mark Andrews. So Mark Andrews, quiet to start the season. Last couple games, competitive football games. This game, competitive football game. I like the receiving yard number more than the catch number at over 2.5 catches plus 114. The receiving yard number at 27.5 receiving yards minus 110. I think both of these numbers are over at Bet365. If you were to pick one, I would pick the yardage over the catches, but Andrews more involved over the last couple of weeks. 5 targets, 4 grabs, 55 yards, 4 targets, 3 grabs, 66 yards. And again, competitive ball game. So I expect this game to be competitive where Andrews has been quiet in the second half of games, not needed when they run out the clock. Should Baltimore get up 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game, that would be bad news for Mark Andrews. You hope that he gets there in the first half. But I am leaning with Andrews in terms of receiving yards and then the catches. The other 2 props are in the other game. James Conner over 10.5 receiving yards. I actually think the over 14.5 rushing attempts is pretty low as well. He's coming off his worst game. 2 of his last 3 games have been dud games for him. I know he was on the sidelines a little bit with an injury last week, and the offense was just a mess. So we saw a little bit of Benson, but the Chargers are great at stopping the run, but they rank inside the top 10 in receptions to running backs. So I looked at all the games, and every back they have faced, or every team they faced, a running back has had at least 11 receiving yards against them last week, McLaughlin and Javonte Williams. And we look at James Conner, he has a catch in every single game. He has 36 yards and 6 catches over his last 2 games. So if they do struggle to move the ball against this run defense, which I think is possible, maybe it's a couple catches, maybe a screen pass, check down stuff. So I'm taking James Conner over 10.5 receiving yards. I think he's going to struggle to run between the tackles again this week. I really do. But I think he'll get 15 plus attempts. I think he's going to flirt with like 20 plus opportunities. If he doesn't, it would be concerning. Like Benson may get a little bit more run, like we've seen from other rookie running backs get some run. I would make sure Benson's own. In fact, excuse me, I would, in Yahoo leagues, I would pick up the backup running backs. I talk about this all the time. If you've been following my work, if something happens to Connor tonight, everybody's running after Benson, spending all the fab. If something happens to J.K. Dobbins, Kamani Vidal, I think Kamani Vidal is one of the better stashes in football at the moment with Gus Edwards on IR. And J.K. Dobbins, he's been on the sidelines more than he's been on the field over the past couple of years. And listen, I'm rooting for him. He looks awesome. He looks explosive. It's great. But if something happens, everybody is just breaking the bank for Kamani Vidal and run for his team, right? This is what they want to do. So Kamani Vidal, Benson, Justice Hill, these guys should be picked up. If you can't afford it, drop a bench spot. Not every league allows you to do this. It's a Yahoo thing. You play over there. You can drop guys that already played that are on your bench. So I would do it. I would rank it Vidal. I would say Vidal, Benson, and Hill. Hill maybe even 2 because of it's the Ravens and they're explosive. And although he wouldn't be fantastic between the tackles, he'd be a starting running back on, arguably the best offense in football. The other guy's Lad McConkey at over 4.5 catches here, minus 138 FanDuel. I bet this one earlier was minus 145, so I wish I waited it out. I thought it would, increase a little bit. They don't throw the football that much. We've talked a lot about how they want to run the football and they're going to lean on J.K. Dobbins, run for a squad, but he's first in target share on the squad, 23%. Johnson's doubtful. Quentin Johnston, he's only topped this number in 3 of the 5 games, but he's had at least 6 targets in every game but 1. So I think, if this game, I think it will be competitive, and that's why I feel like James Conner will just get his rushing attempts and it'll be run on both sides. But I think if they're going to throw the football here, clearly Herbert's throwing it to Lad McConkey. So with Quentin Johnson ruled out of this football game, we'll go over 4.5 catches. Man, I'm hurting. All right, touchdowns. Some longer shots here. Mark Andrews plus 330. Listen, I think J.K. Dobbins scores a touchdown, and I think that Derrik Henry scores a touchdown, but the odds are minus. And Henry, what are you going to do, right? We've talked about it. I think, on the series show, Dane bets him every week. We talked about the over 10.5 rushing touchdowns to start the season, could get 20. Like, we weren't kidding about that. He's had a touchdown in every game. He's 1 actually away from passing 10, which is wild. We're week 7. Mark Andrews plus 330, touchdown last week. Again, what I talked about, more competitive, more involved. Flowers is not really a big touchdown guy. If they get near the goal line, it's obviously going to be Henry. But Andrews is a mismatch. And if this game is competitive, like I'm thinking, we could get a few, like 5 or 6 targets for Andrews. So I'll take that at plus 330. Mike Evans is plus 150 and Chris Godwin's plus 160. I'm going to lean with Evans here at plus 150. Godwin's been the touchdown machine this year, but I think the better matchup is with Mike Evans. That's why I'm taking him in the receiving yard number, and I think he's more likely to score a touchdown tonight. I put in Cade Otton here at plus 340 as a long shot. Baker Mayfield over 1.5 passing touchdowns at minus 110, I think is very intriguing as well. Heading into this week, I mentioned it. No team had allowed more receiving touchdowns to wideouts than Baltimore, and no team has allowed more catches to tight ends than Baltimore. They've yet to allow a tight end to score a touchdown against them, but they're up at the top in terms of catches to the position. Again, they just stop the run. So I'll lean with Otten here at plus 340. I think he found the end zone last week. That'd be my long shot. The Cardinal that I'm going with Marvin Harrison Jr. We've seen him score a couple touchdowns so far this season. It's been very frustrating to own him. The usage hasn't really been there, but the touchdown upside is high, right? It could be a fade in the corner end zone. It could be a catch and run, which we've seen the explosiveness, the high A dot. So plus 175 for Marv, I think is all right. And then I have Kamani Vidal. As much as I said J.K. Dobbins scores a touchdown, Kamani Vidal could be the goal line back inside this offense. It's kind of how he's built. I know he had the receiving touchdown last week, but he may get a target or two. But I think there's a possibility where he may turn out to be the better goal line back in LA. And we've only seen a handful of snaps from him, but that's how I view him. I think he could be a short yardage type back there. And who knows? He may get a handful of touches here today. Like he could flirt with 7 touches. If those come in the red zone, boom, giddy up. So a couple of these are long shots. Andrews plus 330, Evans plus 150, K. Dotton plus 340, Marvin Harrison Jr. plus 175, and Kamani Vidal plus 375. So I'm going to get out of here, guys. Appreciate you taking the time to hang out and listening to me. Try to form a sentence and try to produce some winners here. FTN show will save you a little bit of cash. We're actually running a promo over at FTN Fantasy with hoop season getting underway tomorrow. So 20% off actually using promo code FTN Hoops. With the betting package, you get all the picks across all sports, projections, tools, and Discord channel over at ftnfantasy.com. So those are in order of how I like them. The parlays here: Henry 15 attempts and 75 rushing yards, J.K. Dobbins 15 attempts and 75 rushing yards, Zay Flowers over 60 receiving yards, Mike Evans over 54.5 receiving yards. I got Mark Andrews. I like the receiving yards at 27.5 more than the catches at 2.5. But I like both. I bet every single thing that I'm showing you guys here. James Conner over 10.5 receiving yards and Lad McConkey at over 4.5 receiving yards. Like I said, I think that Godwin is also in play. Just given the fact that I don't think they'll have a lot of success running the football. Andrews for a touchdown, Evans for a touchdown, K. Dotton for a touchdown, Marvin Harrison Jr. for a touchdown, long shot touchdown call here. Kamani Vidal at plus 375. All right, I'm out of here, guys. Enjoy the football. Let the winners be yours. And Dangle Betselli tomorrow. 16 games on the ice tomorrow night. Frozen frenzy. My goodness. We'll talk to you more. Cheers.